Hello friends, today we're going to continue our annotation of The Lie by Kurt Vonnegut. Remember, active reading takes patience and thoughtfulness. Remember to underline where I've underlined on my copy in the video. Especially pay attention to words that you may not know the meanings of. Please don't read over them. You have time to write a quick definition or at least think about what the words mean in context and take your best guess. Okay, let's get started. A scholarship boy wrote it, said Sylvia. I think that's awfully nice. He was a scholarship boy, wasn't he? His father was an ordinary automobile mechanic in North Marston. You hear what a democratic school you're going to, Eli? Said Sylvia. Half an hour later, Ben Barkley brought the limousine to a stop before the Holly House, a rambling country inn 20 years older than the Republic. The inn was at the edge of the White Hill sward, glimpsing at the school's rooftops and spires over the innocence of the wilderness of the Sanford Remensel Bird Sanctuary. Ben Barkley was sent away with the car for an hour and a half. Dr. Remensel shepherded Sylvia and Eli into a familiar, low-ceiling world of pewter clocks, lovely old woods, agreeable servants, elegant food and drink. This first paragraph is focused on the setting. What feelings is it meant to bring out in the reader? Eli, clumsy with horror of what was surely to come, banged a grandmother clock with his elbow as he passed, made the clock cry. Sylvia excused herself. Dr. Remensel and Eli went to the threshold of the dining room, where a hostess welcomed them both by name. They were given a table beneath an oil portrait of one of 3 White Hill boys who had gone on to become President of the United States. The dining room was filling quickly with families. What every family had was at least one boy about Eli's age. Most of the boys wore White Hill blazers, black with pale blue piping, with White Hill seals on the breast pockets. A few, like Eli, were not yet entitled to wear blazers. They were simply hoping to get in. Again, you want to think about the setting and what do you think the setting is supposed to reveal to this reader about what life is like here. So think about the message about life that the setting helps the readers to kind of understand. As we read through these final paragraphs in this column, I really would like you to start thinking about coming of age, making some inferences. What life lesson is Dr. Remensel trying to teach his son with his words here? The doctor ordered a drink, then turned to Eli, his son, and said, "Your mother has the idea that you're entitled to special privilege around here. I hope you don't have that idea, too." "No, sir," said Eli. "It would be a great source of embarrassment to me," said Dr. Remensel with considerable grandeur, "if I were to hear that you had used the Remensel name as though you thought Remensels were something special." So again, what is Dr. Remensel trying to teach Eli? You can judge the lesson. Is the lesson about life the proper lesson? Why? Again, you don't need complete sentences, friends, okay? Predict how Dr. Remensel will react when he discovers Eli's lie and why he might react that way. Don't need to answer in complete sentences. Bullet points are just fine. And then ask Dr. Remensel a question based on this section. "I know," said Eli wretchedly. "That settles it," said the doctor. He had nothing more to say about it. He gave an abbreviated salute to several people he knew in the dining room, speculated as to what sort of party had reserved a long banquet table that was set up along one wall. He decided that it was for a visiting athletic team. Sylvia arrived, and Eli had to be told in a sharp whisper to stand when a woman came to the table. Sylvia was full of news. The long table, she had learned, was for the 30 boys from Africa. I'll bet that's more black people than have eaten here since this place was founded, she said softly. How fast these things change these days. Okay, there's a good place for a reaction. You're right about how fast things change, said Dr. Menzel. You're wrong about the black people who've eaten here. This used to be a busy part of the Underground Railroad. Really? Said Sylvia. How exciting! She looked all about herself in a bird-like way. I think everything's exciting here. I only wish Eli had a blazer on. Now, this quote, a bird-like way, is a simile. So I'd like you to identify and evaluate. So we identify this as a simile. So you want to underline, looked all about herself in a bird-like way. And then you need to evaluate it and start to analyze it. So what are some qualities of a bird? What are two qualities of a bird that Sylvia also possesses in this moment? And you want to list two qualities, and then you want to finish that little phrase. Sylvia is similar to a bird because don't just repeat the qualities, but kind of apply the qualities to her character. Dr. Remenzel reddened. He isn't entitled to one, he said. I know that, said Sylvia. I thought you were going to ask somebody for permission to put a blazer on Eli right away, said the doctor. I wouldn't do that, said Sylvia, a little offended now. Why are you always afraid I'll embarrass you? Never mind. Excuse me. Forget it, said Dr. Remenzel. Sylvia brightened again, put her hand on Eli's arm, and looked radiantly at the man in the dining room doorway. For this last annotation, at the top, I'd like you to make a connection. Text to self, text to world, text to text. When you make the connection to this story, think about families, think about identity, the roles that each of these characters is taking on within their family, and think about how their actions are helping Eli to come of age. No need for complete sentences. A few bullet-pointed ideas is just fine. Sylvia brightened again, put her hand on Eli's arm, and looked radiantly at a man in the dining room doorway. There's my favorite person in all the world next to my son and husband, she said. She met Dr. Donald Warren, headmaster of the White Hill School. A thin gentleman in his early 60s, Dr. Warren was in the doorway with the manager of the inn, looking over the arrangements for the Africans. It was then that Eli got up abruptly, fled the dining room, fled as much of the nightmare as he possibly could leave behind. He brushed past Dr. Warren rudely, though he knew him well, though Dr. Warren spoke his name. Dr. Warren looked after him sadly. This is a good moment for you to infer why Eli didn't tell his parents he failed. 2 inferences, not complete sentences. I'll be darned, said Dr. Remenzel. What brought that on? Maybe he really is sick, said Sylvia. The Remenzels had no time to react more elaborately because Dr. Warren spotted them and crossed quickly to their table. He greeted them, some of his perplexity about Eli showing in his greeting. He asked if he might sit down. Certainly, of course, said Dr. Menzel expansively. Would be honored if you did, heavens. Not to eat, said Dr. Warren. I'll be eating at the long table with the new boys. I would like to talk, though. He saw that there were 5 places set at the table. You're expecting someone? We passed Tom Hillier and his boy on the way, said Dr. Remenzel. They'll be along in a minute. Good, said Dr. Warren absently. He fidgeted, looked again in the direction in which Eli had disappeared. Tom's boy will be going to White Hill in the fall, said Dr. Remenzel. Said Dr. Remenzel. Oh, yes, he will. Is he a scholarship boy like his father? Said Sylvia. That's not a polite question, said Dr. Menzel severely. At this point, I'd like you to ask what questions are going through your mind at this point in the story. Your mind should be engaging with it. We're at the point where we need to start applying some of the literary devices to the story. So if you would take a moment and look up situational irony in the literary devices packet I gave you earlier in the year. It should be in your resources section. Oh, I beg your pardon, said Sylvia. No, that's perfectly proper question these days, said Dr. Warren. We don't keep that sort of information very secret anymore. We're proud of our scholarship boys, and they have every reason to be proud of themselves. Tom's boy got the highest score anyone's ever gotten on the entrance examinations. We feel privileged to have him. We never did find out Eli's score, said Dr. Menzel. He said it with good-natured, humored resignation, without expectation that Eli had done especially well. A good strong medium, I imagine, said Sylvia. She said this on the basis of Eli's grades in primary school, which ranged from medium to terrible. The headmaster looked surprised. I didn't tell you his scores, he said. Okay. So I need you to explain why this is situational irony. I also want you to think about exposition. There's been a reveal here. So I want you to explain why Kurt Vonnegut, the author, waits until this moment to let Eli know about Eli's grades ranging from medium to terrible. We haven't seen you since you took the examinations, said Dr. Menzel. The letter I wrote you, said Dr. Warren. What letter? Said Dr. Menzel. Did we get a letter? A letter from me, said Dr. Warren with growing incredulity. The hardest letter I've ever had to write. Sylvia shook her head. We never got any letter from you. Dr. Warren sat back looking very ill. I mailed it myself, he said. It was definitely mailed 2 weeks ago. Dr. Menzel shrugged. The U.S. mails don't lose much, he said, but I guess now and then something gets misplaced. Dr. Warren cradled his head on his hands. Oh, dear, oh, my, oh, Lord, he said. I was surprised to see Eli here. I wondered. Okay, at this point, please infer what's going through Dr. Warren's mind. What could he be thinking? And then at the end of this page, I'd like you to pass some judgments and criticisms on the adults in this story, the adults who are shaping Eli's identity and helping him to grow up. So makes 2 judgments about Sylvia. It could be a positive judgment, what has she done right? It could be a negative judgment, what has she done wrong? Same for Dr. Menzel and the same for Dr. Warren. Are they doing a good job guiding Eli, helping him to figure out who he is and where he belongs? What could they have done better? I was surprised to see Eli here. I wondered that he would want to come along with you. He didn't come along just to see the scenery, said Dr. Menzel. He came to enroll. I want to know what was in that letter, said Sylvia. Dr. Warren raised his head, folded his hands. What the letter said was this, and no other words could be more difficult for me to say. On the basis of his work in primary school and his scores on the entrance examinations, I must tell you that your son and my good friend Eli cannot possibly do the work required of boys at White Hill. Dr. Warren's voice steadied, and so did his gaze. To admit Eli to White Hill, to expect him to do White Hill work, he said, would be both unrealistic and cruel. So friends, you need to remember that Eli read those words. Okay, so now take a moment and make some inferences, some interpretations. How did reading those words affect Eli's identity? Put him on a coming of age path. What is he realizing about the world, about himself? Remember, when you respond in annotations, you do not need to respond in complete sentences. Bulleted ideas are fine. Even visuals are fine if that feels more natural to you. 30 African boys, escorted by several faculty members, State Department men, and diplomats from their own countries, filed into the dining room. And Tom Hillier and his boy, having no idea that something had just gone awfully wrong for the Remenzels, came in too and said hello to the Remenzels and Dr. Warren, gaily as though life couldn't possibly be better. "I'll talk to you more about this later, if you'd like," Dr. Warren said to the Remenzels, rising. "I have to go now, but later on," he left quickly. "My mind's a blank," said Sylvia. "My mind's a perfect blank." Tom Hillier and his boy sat down. Hillier looked at the menu before him, clapped his hands, and said, "What's good? I'm hungry." And then he said, "Say, where's your boy?" "He stepped out for a moment," said the doctor, evenly. "We've got to find him," said Sylvia to her husband. In due time," said Dr. Menzel. Okay, this is a great place for a prediction. So your first prediction, what do you think Dr. Remenzel's going to do next? Always think about why when you write a prediction. Where do you think Eli went? What do you think he's doing? Predict where they're going to find Eli and maybe why. Okay, friends, it's time to familiarize yourself with a new literary term or review this term if you already know it. So look in your resources packet. Think about what a dynamic character is. And as we read this next column, you're thinking about which characters are dynamic and what makes them dynamic. "That letter," said Sylvia. "Eli knew about it. He found it and tore it up. Of course he did." She started to cry, thinking of all the hideous trap Eli had caught himself in. "I'm not interested in right now in what Eli's done," said Dr. Menzel. "Right now, I'm a lot more interested in what some other people are going to do." Very important moment. Why is this important, these last lines of Dr. Menzel? "What do you mean?" said Sylvia. Dr. Menzel stood impressively, angry and determined. "I mean," he said, "I'm going to see how quickly people can change their minds around here." "Please," said Sylvia, trying to hold him, trying to calm him. "We've got to find Eli. That's the most important thing." Now we need to contrast Sylvia's parenting goal to Dr. Mendel's parenting goal. Which one is better and why? "The first thing," said Dr. Menzel quite loudly, "is to get Eli admitted to White Hill. After that, we'll find him and we'll bring him back." "But, darling," said Sylvia. "No but about it," said Dr. Menzel. "There's a majority of the Board of Overseers in this room at this very moment. Every one of them is a close friend of mine or a close friend of my father. If they tell Dr. Warren Eli's in, that's it, Eli's in. If there's room for all these other people," he said, "there's darn well room for Eli too." Why is this passage ironic? He strode quickly to a table nearby, sat down heavily, and began to talk to a fierce-looking and splendid old gentleman who was eating there. The old gentleman was chairman of the board. Sylvia apologized to the baffled Hilliers and then went in search of Eli. Please ask Sylvia 2 questions. Asking this person and that person, Sylvia found him. He was outside, all alone, on a bench in a bower of lilacs that had just begun to bud. Eli heard his mother's coming on the gravel path, stayed where he was, resigned. "Did you find out?" he said. "Or do I still have to tell you?" Okay, react to this moment with Eli and his mother. What feelings does it bring out in the reader? About you? She said gently. About not getting in? Dr. Warren told us. I tore his letter up, said Eli. I can't understand that, she said. Your father and I have always made you feel that you had to go to White Hill, that nothing else would do. I feel better, said Eli. He tried to smile, found he could do it easily. I feel so much better now that it's over. I tried to tell you a couple of times, but I just couldn't. I didn't know how. That's my fault, not yours, she said. Okay, a couple of big moments in these few paragraphs. So you want to explain or interpret what feelings you have about Sylvia now at this point. How have they changed throughout the story? How is Sylvia's character shown to be dynamic and not just one-dimensional? Also, with his mother's lines, that's my fault, not yours. Think about our thematic topics. How is this shaping Eli's maturation process, his growing up? How is it helping him to figure out his identity, who he is, where he belongs? What's father doing? Said Eli. Sylvia was so intent on comforting Eli that she'd put out of her mind what her husband was up to. Now she realized that Dr. Amenzo was making a ghastly mistake. She didn't want Eli admitted to White Hill, could see what a cruel thing that would be. She couldn't bring herself to tell the boy what his father was doing, so she said, "He'll be along in a minute, dear. He understands." And then she said, "You wait here, and I'll go get him and come right back." But she didn't have to go to Dr. Amenzel. At that moment, the big man came out of the inn and caught sight of his wife and son. He came to her and to Eli. He looked dazed. "Well," she said, They all said no," said Dr. Menzel, very subdued. "That's for the best," said Sylvia. "I'm relieved. I really am." "Who said no?" said Eli. "Who said no to what?" "The members of the board," said Dr. Menzel, not looking anyone in the eye. "I asked them to make an exception in your case, to reverse their decision and let you in." Eli stood, his face filled with incredulity and shame that were instant. "You what?" he said, and there was no childishness in the way he said it. Next came anger. "You shouldn't have done that," he said to his father. Dr. Menzel nodded. "So I've already been told." "That isn't done," said Eli. "How awful. You shouldn't have." Okay, friends, for this section, you really want to, again, keep that coming of age thematic topic, that identity thematic topic in your mind. How are these interactions, these words between Eli and his father, shaping what he's learning, molding his identity, his personality? Think about what's motivating each of these characters and think about why they are dynamic, how they're changing, how their relationships with each other are changing. In 15 or 20 years, this will be a moment that they look back on. This will be part of their core memories. And why is that significant? How will this moment impact their relationship in the future? Lots to think about as you read. "You're right," said Dr. Menzel, accepting the scolding lamely. "Now I am ashamed," said Eli, and he showed that he was. Dr. Menzel, in his wretchedness, could find no strong words to say. "I apologize to you both," he said at last. "It was a very bad thing to try." "Now Menzel has asked for something," said Eli. "I don't suppose Ben's back yet with the car," said Dr. Menzel. It was obvious that Ben wasn't. "We'll wait out here for him," he said. "I don't want to go back in there now." A Menzel asked for something? As though a Menzel were something special? Said Eli. "I don't suppose," said Dr. Menzel, and he left the sentence unfinished, dangling in the air. "You don't suppose what?" said his wife, her face puzzled. I don't suppose, said Dr. Menzel, that we'll ever be coming here anymore. So look at the story as a whole, and I want you to think about the characterization. We've been focused on that literary element throughout this reading. What were Eli's motivations for lying? You should be able to identify 3 distinct motivations. Again, they don't have to be in complete sentences. I would also like you to contrast that with Dr. Menzel's motivations for asking for special treatment for his son, even though throughout the entire story up to this point, he said Remenzels don't do that. Remenzels don't use their name to ask for special privileges. The last annotation for the story, for the entire story, is just kind of creating a visual representation of the effect of Dr. Menzel's choice to ask for special treatment on his family. How is this going to have a lasting impact? And visualize that. It doesn't have to be literal. The visual can be symbolic. Okay, great job, guys. Thank you so much.